Japan, renowned for its technological advancements, cultural richness, and disciplined workforce, a nation that has gifted the world with awe-inspiring achievements and breathtaking artistry. But beneath this polished exterior lies a contrasting reality, a hidden layer of struggles that often goes unnoticed. Imagine being unable to afford a proper apartment and ending up living in a tiny cubicle in an internet cafe. That's the reality for thousands of people in Japan today. These cafes, designed for short stays, have become unexpected homes for those struggling with the rising costs of living. What's wild is how these spaces are designed. Small cubicles, maybe big enough to lie down, often paired with dim lighting and a computer screen. It's not the cozy setup you'd picture for home, but for many it's the most affordable option available. Rent in cities like Tokyo is sky high. Even a small apartment requires hefty deposits and agency fees, which can feel impossible when you're stuck in a cycle of short-term or low-paying jobs. It's no surprise some people turn to these makeshift solutions. Many of these internet cafe refugees are caught in a tough economic trap. Japan's once reliable lifelong employment system has crumbled, leaving many workers with unstable, temporary contracts and limited income to cover basic needs. You'd think internet cafes would be a temporary stop, but some people live here for months or even years. It's not just about saving money. Some are trying to escape long commutes, while others may be dealing with family issues or personal struggles. These cafes offer basic amenities like showers and vending machines, but let's be real, living out of one can't be easy. It's a minimalistic lifestyle where people adapt by storing their belongings in lockers and sleeping in cramped quarters. The numbers are staggering. In Tokyo alone, over 15,000 people use internet cafes daily, and about 4,000 of them have no permanent home. Most work in unstable jobs, reflecting a deeper issue with Japan's economy and housing market. The situation caught the world's attention with a 2007 documentary comparing internet cafes to refugee camps. It was a harsh but accurate description of the struggle for stability in one of the world's most expensive cities. At the heart of this phenomenon is a broader question. Why is affordable housing still so out of reach in a country known for its innovation and efficiency? It's a challenge that highlights gaps in labor protections, income equality, and urban planning. The term internet cafe refugees might sound like something out of a movie, but it's a very real and growing issue in Japan. These are individuals who, unable to afford traditional housing, have turned to cubicles in internet cafes as their living space. These cubicles are just a few square meters, often only big enough for a chair, desk, and maybe a place to stretch out. It's the kind of setup you'd expect for a quick internet session, not for someone to live in for weeks, months, or even years. For many, it's not just about finances, it's about survival. The upfront costs of renting an apartment in Japan, like deposits and key money, can be overwhelming. Internet cafes offer an option without those barriers, making them a lifeline for people in need. Living in an internet cafe comes with challenges. Privacy is almost non-existent, noise is constant, and the spaces are far from comfortable. Yet for those struggling with job insecurity or personal problems, it can feel like the best option they have. Some people adapt surprisingly well to this lifestyle. They use the showers provided in the cafes, keep their belongings in lockers, and rely on convenience stores for meals. It's minimalistic living, but it comes with a heavy emotional and physical toll. The demographics of these refugees are diverse: students, temporary workers, and even older individuals who've lost their jobs or families. It's a reminder that financial instability can affect anyone, regardless of age or background. Internet cafes have become a symbol of both resilience and inequality in modern Japan. While they offer a temporary solution, they also highlight the larger issues of unaffordable housing and unstable employment that force people into these spaces. The phenomenon gained global attention through media coverage, shedding light on the hidden struggles of urban life in Japan. It's a sobering reality for a nation often associated with high-tech cities and economic prowess. At its core, the existence of internet cafe refugees challenges us to rethink how society addresses poverty and housing insecurity. It's a stark reminder that behind the sleek exteriors of modern cities, countless untold stories of hardship exist. Japan's economy is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's the third largest in the world, but on the other, it has deep-rooted issues that make life harder for everyday people. High living costs and unstable jobs leave many struggling to afford even the basics like housing. Housing in cities like Tokyo is notoriously expensive. Even tiny apartments can cost a fortune. Add to that upfront fees like deposits, agency costs, and key money, and renting becomes almost impossible for those with lower incomes or irregular jobs. The collapse of Japan's lifelong employment system in the 1990s has had a lasting impact. Once, workers could rely on stable jobs for life. Now many rely on temporary contracts or part-time work, which offer little security and even less income. Temporary jobs often come with low wages and no benefits. For workers earning just enough to scrape by, saving for a better future, or even paying for rent, becomes an impossible dream. This insecurity pushes many toward alternative housing options like internet cafes. It's not just young people affected by this shift. Middle-aged and older workers, who lose their stable jobs later in life, often find themselves unable to re-enter the workforce with the same level of security or income, creating a wider crisis. The high costs of living go beyond rent. Everything from food to transportation eats into already tight budgets. When the choice is between paying rent or eating, the idea of living in a cheaper internet cafe starts to make sense. Economic policies haven't been able to fully address these challenges. While Japan has programs to support its citizens, the growing income gap and the rise of unstable jobs make it hard to reverse the trend of housing insecurity. For many, the instability isn't just financial, it's emotional too. Living without a permanent home creates constant stress, leading to mental health struggles that are rarely talked about, but deeply felt. Japan's housing crisis and job insecurity are a stark reminder that even in one of the world's richest nations, a significant portion of the population can still be left behind. It's a story of resilience, but also one of systemic inequality that needs urgent attention. The 1990s economic crisis, often called the lost decade, didn't just dent Japan's economy, it completely transformed its job market. Gone were the days of lifelong employment, where workers could depend on a single company for stability from graduation to retirement. This shift gave rise to a culture of temporary employment, where contracts are short-term, wages are low, and benefits are nearly non-existent. For millions of workers, this means no job security and no guarantee of steady income, making long-term planning almost impossible. The rise of temporary jobs has created a generation of freeters, a term used to describe people working part-time or freelance jobs instead of traditional full-time roles. While some choose this lifestyle, many are forced into it due to a lack of better options. For companies, temporary workers are a cost-effective solution. They can hire and fire without the obligations that come with full-time employees. But for the workers themselves, this lack of stability means they're always one paycheck away from financial trouble. Housing is one of the biggest casualties of this system. With unpredictable incomes, many workers can't commit to the high upfront costs of renting an apartment. This has driven some to live in cheaper alternatives, like internet cafes or shared housing. The psychological toll of temporary work is often overlooked. Without stability, many workers feel stuck in a cycle of insecurity and stress. The pressure to constantly look for the next job can be overwhelming and isolating. Middle-aged workers in particular have been hit hard. After losing their stable jobs during the economic downturn, many found themselves unable to compete in a market that favors younger, cheaper, and more flexible labor. Temporary employment also impacts social structures. People delay marriage, children, and even major life decisions because they simply can't afford them. It's a ripple effect that extends beyond individuals, reshaping entire communities. This issue highlights a growing divide in Japan, a nation celebrated for its innovation and discipline, but one that struggles to protect its workers from the harsh realities of modern capitalism. Fixing it requires more than just policy changes. It calls for a cultural shift in how work and stability are valued. Renting an apartment in Japan is no simple task. The process often involves hefty upfront costs, security deposits, key money, and agency fees that can total several months' worth of rent. For someone living paycheck to paycheck, this can feel completely out of reach. Internet cafes offer a unique alternative. For a fraction of the cost, people can rent a cubicle equipped with a computer, access to the internet, and sometimes even free drinks. It's far from ideal, but it provides a temporary refuge for those in financial need. Unlike apartments, internet cafes don't require long-term commitments or paperwork. You pay for what you use, whether it's just a night or a week. This flexibility is a lifesaver for people who can't predict their income or job stability. These cafes also come with basic amenities like showers, vending machines, and even food menus. It's not luxurious by any means, but it allows people to cover their immediate needs without the overwhelming burden of traditional housing costs. For some, the appeal goes beyond cost. Living in a cafe means being close to city centers, which can save hours of commuting time. This is especially valuable for people with irregular work hours or multiple part-time jobs. However, these spaces are far from comfortable. Privacy is almost non-existent, and the small cubicles can feel claustrophobic. Over time, the lack of personal space can take a toll on both physical and mental health. Despite their limitations, internet cafes provide a glimpse into the resilience of individuals adapting to difficult circumstances. They represent a creative, if imperfect, solution to Japan's broader issues of housing affordability and job insecurity. What's surprising is how normalized this has become. For some, it's no longer seen as a desperate measure, but simply a way to get by. This normalization reflects both the adaptability of individuals and the systemic failures of Japan's housing policies. While internet cafes serve as a short-term fix, they're not a long-term solution. The question remains, how can Japan bridge the gap between affordability and accessibility to ensure that everyone has a place to truly call home? Living in an internet cafe is a lifestyle born out of necessity, not choice. For many, it's the only option when trying to balance high living costs, long commutes, or personal challenges that make traditional housing unattainable. A major reason people turn to internet cafes is to save money. The daily rates are much cheaper than renting an apartment, especially in cities like Tokyo. It's a financial trade-off that many are forced to make to stay afloat. Long commutes are another driving factor. Japan's urban sprawl often forces workers to spend hours on trains each day. Living in a cafe close to work can save both time and energy, even if it means sacrificing comfort and privacy. For some, these spaces offer a way to escape family conflicts or personal issues. The anonymity of an internet cafe allows individuals to carve out a space of their own, however small or temporary it might be. Adapting to life in a cafe requires embracing a minimalist lifestyle. Belongings are reduced to the essentials, often stored in lockers or carried in bags. Meals come from convenience stores or vending machines, and showers are taken in communal facilities. Despite the struggles, people find ways to make it work. They build routines around their limited resources, using the cafe's amenities and nearby facilities to meet their daily needs. It's not ideal, but it's a testament to human resilience. Social interactions can be minimal in these spaces. Most people keep to themselves, focused on their own screens and lives. The isolation can be both a blessing and a curse, offering solitude but also deepening feelings of loneliness. The constant hum of cafe life, keyboards clacking, people coming and going, becomes the background noise of existence. Over time, it's easy to lose track of days, blending into a routine that feels neither here nor there. While the internet cafe lifestyle is an adaptation to harsh circumstances, it's also a stark reflection of societal gaps. It forces us to ask why so many people are left to navigate these struggles alone, without better systems of support or opportunity. The numbers paint a sobering picture. In Tokyo alone, over 15,300 people rely on internet cafes for their daily living needs. For 4,000 of them, these cubicles aren't just a convenience. They're home, the only place they can afford. What's more concerning is that 70% of these individuals work in unstable jobs. They're often part-time workers, freelancers, or temporary employees with unpredictable incomes that make renting a traditional apartment nearly impossible. The demographics are diverse. You'll find young people fresh out of school, struggling to find stable employment, as well as middle-aged workers who lost their jobs and can't regain their footing in the competitive job market. Many of these individuals work in industries like retail, food service, or delivery, jobs that offer little job security and pay just enough to scrape by. For them, living in an internet cafe is the only way to save a little money at the end of the month. It's not just men either. Although men make up the majority, a growing number of women are also turning to internet cafes for temporary housing, facing the same financial struggles and unstable work environments. The cost of living in Tokyo exacerbates the issue. Even for those working full-time, the combination of high rents, transportation costs, and everyday expenses can stretch paychecks too thin, leaving little room for stability or savings. Some use internet cafes as a stepping stone, hoping to save enough money to eventually afford an apartment. Others, however, find themselves stuck in this lifestyle for years, unable to break free from the cycle of low income and high expenses. The situation is a reminder that homelessness doesn't always look the way people expect. Many of these individuals have jobs and routines, blending into society while quietly struggling to find a stable place to live. Behind these statistics are thousands of untold stories of resilience, struggle, and the human desire for dignity and stability. These numbers aren't just data. They're a call to action for addressing the deeper issues of housing and economic inequality. In 2007, a groundbreaking documentary brought the issue of internet cafe refugees into the spotlight. It drew a startling comparison between these spaces and refugee camps, a bold metaphor that resonated with audiences worldwide. The film didn't just show cramped cubicles and dimly lit corridors. It told the human stories behind them, individuals who, despite working tirelessly, couldn't afford a stable home. It was a harsh critique of the economic and social systems at play. For many viewers, the documentary was an eye-opener. Japan, a nation often admired for its technological advancements and economic power, was revealed to have a hidden side where thousands of people lived in precarious conditions. The comparison to refugee camps wasn't made lightly. The documentary highlighted the lack of privacy, the minimalistic lifestyles, and the transient nature of living in an internet cafe, conditions that mirrored those of displaced populations. Interviews with cafe residents revealed the deep emotional toll of this lifestyle. People shared stories of isolation, shame, and the constant stress of living without stability. It put a human face on an issue that had previously been ignored. The film also sparked conversations about Japan's housing policies and labor market. Why were so many people falling through the cracks? What could be done to prevent this from becoming a permanent feature of urban life? Media coverage following the documentary amplified its impact. News outlets and social commentators began to address the issue more openly, forcing policymakers to acknowledge the growing housing and employment crises. Despite the attention, real change has been slow. While the documentary raised awareness, it also exposed how deeply rooted these problems are in Japan's economic and social systems, requiring long-term solutions rather than quick fixes. The legacy of the documentary lies in its ability to start a conversation. It showed that behind every cubicle door is a story worth telling, reminding us that systemic issues can only be addressed when we're willing to confront uncomfortable truths. The rise of internet cafe refugees is more than just a housing issue. It's a symptom of deeper societal challenges in Japan. It reveals the growing divide between those who thrive in the modern economy and those who struggle to keep up. Income disparity plays a huge role in this crisis. As wages stagnate and living costs rise, many workers find themselves unable to afford even the basics. The gap between high earners and low-income workers continues to widen, leaving many without a safety net. Affordable housing is another key issue. Urban areas like Tokyo offer few options for low-cost living, and the high upfront costs of renting an apartment push people into alternative solutions like internet cafes or shared housing. Labor protections haven't kept pace with economic changes. Temporary and part-time workers make up a significant portion of the workforce, but they lack the benefits and stability needed to secure long-term housing or build savings. Cultural norms also play a role. The stigma around poverty in Japan can make it difficult for people to seek help. Many prefer to remain invisible, quietly enduring their struggles, rather than drawing attention to their situation. The lack of government intervention exacerbates the problem. While there are programs to support the homeless, the internet cafe phenomenon falls into a grey area, with many residents technically employed but still unable to afford a home. The issue also highlights the challenges of urbanization. As cities grow and attract more workers, the demand for housing skyrockets. Without policies to ensure affordability, more people will continue to be priced out of traditional living arrangements. For individuals living in internet cafes, the challenges aren't just economic, they're deeply personal. The stress of instability, combined with societal pressure to succeed, creates a heavy emotional burden that often goes unspoken. The rise of internet cafe refugees forces Japan to confront its priorities. How can a society known for its innovation and efficiency allow so many to fall through the cracks? It's a question that demands both empathy and action. Addressing these societal challenges requires more than just short-term solutions. It calls for a re-evaluation of how Japan supports its most vulnerable citizens, ensuring that no one is left to face these struggles alone.